Chapter 22. Oh, hi, Scott, Diane said, setting her paperback down on the table as I stepped into the kitchen. Ernie phoned from the hotel, said to help yourself. There's some beer in the fridge. Well, I said, happily, proceeding just to do just that. Why'd he phone? I asked, my concerns, I would think, being obvious. Oh, nothing of importance, Diane laughed. He's going to have dinner at the hotel is all. No dinner to cook, no Ernie, no kids. Just me and my book and my feet up for the evening. I did your clothes after Todd's. The subtle tone in her voice brought me abruptly up to full alert. Check and see if any of your duds are missing or got mixed up, she summated, peering over her teacup at me. Uh-oh. What now, I thought. She's got that full-on mother thing going. The thing that only mothers can do. The thing that means, don't you dare fuck with me. I want the straight skinny, and if you think going late to the mother's dinner table was heavy, or else this was the heaviest of all or else's. One did not want to be in this position of matriarchal, motherly, matronly shit at any cost. I was at a loss as to what she was on about. Okay, I said. Your clothes are stacked on the dryer. Just throw Ernie's into the washer. Sure. Re-emerging into the kitchen, having changed, Diane inquired, all there? Nothing missing? Still that subtle terror-inducing tone. No. Not missing a red sweater. Those cheap red long johns are the worst. What are you on about, Diane? I cried, almost wishing I was back on the tractor, as at least that was a known terror. All that blood, Scott. What? I was still bewildered. I did Todd's clothes first, Scott. Then yours. They ran red with blood. I had to rinse your coat twice before I could wash it. Oh, I near sobbed with relief. I blubbied my nose. You bloodied your nose? Yeah, Scott, all of your clothes, down to and including your pants and long underwear, were soaked in blood. And you expect me to believe that much blood came from a nosebleed? Laughing now, immensely relieved I knew what she was on about, I said, well, what do you think? We stopped at the barn before we stumbled in here for a quick repair on a partially severed limb? All that blood, Scott, the tone and the look still present. And so with a sigh, I related a condensed version of how I'd blubbied my nobe. Sorry, Diane, I summated. With all the other problems we had down there at the time, I sort of forgot about it. Lordy, Diane declared. For her, this was the equivalent of cursing a blue streak. You flew off a cliff, knocked out cold, bled what must have been a quart of blood, but under the circumstances, it was of such small consequence it skipped your mind? I didn't reply. I hate to think what else you two went down through there. I imagine it would be the kind of stuff that would keep a mother awake at night. Now, it's probably best you don't know, Diane. Scott, Jean tried to impress upon me when we moved here a steady stream of kids being hauled in here needing patching up would wear on my nerves. But I never imagined the likes of this. Jean was my mother. Sorry, Diane. It's usually just a matter of peroxide and gauze, maybe a stitch or two, the odd concussion. Well, you're a great comfort, Scott. Minor concussions mostly. Reset the odd bone. Oh, please stop, Scott. Sorry, Diane. Mostly it's drying up some tears when the younger kids take a tumble and get scared. Tears and peroxide are one thing, but the condition you and Todd came in, that scared the bejesus out of me. Well, you dealt with it with aplomb, I said, arising from the table for another beer. Consider it a trial by fire, Diane. Does almost leave me looking forward to tears and peroxide, Diane laughed. Ernie did say to help yourself to the beer, Scott, but I suggested under the circumstances you don't risk upsetting Jean by showing up tipsy. Prudent advice, no doubt, Diane. That reminds me, I phoned Jean earlier to tell her you wouldn't be home for lunch. She said she'd phone Evelyn, Todd's mother. Ah, thanks, I hadn't thought of that. See, you kept her cool under fire. By summer's end, you'll be a fully qualified RN, counselor, and psychologist, as well as chief cook and bottle washer. Maybe I'll spend the summer at the cottage, Diane laughed. Well, I best get going, I said, looking at the clock. Your coat's hanging by the stove, but it won't be dry yet. You can get it in the morning if you like. Assuming you're here in the morning. Where else would I be, Diane asked. Well, I don't know, I laughed. I thought maybe the carp would drag you off to church. Ha! What was all that about? Oh, don't ask, Diane. I'll just have you reaching for the whiskey bottle again. Whew. I gotta start packing for the cottage, Diane said with a shudder. Arriving home at a politically acceptable 10 minutes to 6, Mother said, there you are. Diane called over earlier, said you wouldn't be home for lunch. She was vague on the details, but she said you had to call your father at the hotel? That's right. He wasn't really happy, I understated, mashing vigorously at the potatoes. And you had to get Eddie Calver and his backhoe up to the farm? Yeah, that did little in the way of improving his mood. Sure, I can well imagine. What did you need Eddie and the backhoe for? Here comes Dad now, Ma, and to judge by the look on his face, I think it prudent we weren't discussing the subject matter when he comes in. Oh, aren't we just going to have a delightful ambiance at the dinner table tonight? Sorry, Ma, I muttered, spooning the mashed potatoes into a serving bowl. Other than the typical hellos exchanged between the parents, dinner was silent but for the rattle of cutlery and the occasional please pass and thank yous. The old man at meal's end pushed back his chair and, staring at the kitchen counter, began to drum his fingers on the table. Looking across at Mother, I silently emoted a plea for backup. I love you, Mummy. I'm your darling little boy. Yeah, she emoted back. You know better than that, young man. You made your bed. You lie in it. Good effort, though. The old man got up from the table, crossed the kitchen, and made a show of rummaging around in the china cabinet drawer. You know what this is? He said, turning with a blue bank deposit book in his hand. I know what that is, I replied. It was my bank deposit book. $5 a week cash as an allowance was deposited into the bank. Town kids got $2 or $4 a week in those days as a typical allowance. And as I was denied access to the bank's money, the money in the banks, the whole affair was a bone of contention as it was. Mother watched carefully, waiting for what she no doubt thought were the inevitable fireworks when the old man and I moved past the footwork and went right at it. The old man laid a lengthy production of scrolling through the pages, deposit by deposit, page after page. Finally, he thrust the book towards me. See that there, he asked, his finger pointing at the last deposit figure. Yeah, I know what's in there. Well, you do you? Well, come Monday, it's going to be shy that amount by $100. $100, I suppressed a gasp as I struggled to maintain a facial expression of neutrality. $100 was a common working man stiff's take-home pay for a day's labor at that time. Upon reflection, I should have seen it coming. It was more than a fair price for man and machine for half a day, and I certainly didn't begrudge it to Eddie, but it did leave me reeling. Groping for some form of redemption, I said, did Eddie happen to mention he offered me a job? Oh, he did he? The old man responded, smugly pocketing my bank book. Yeah, said he was impressed with my operating skill. Well, is that right? Maybe you better take him up on his offer. Seems to me tractor ballet is a damn expensive hobby. He pirouetted about, mimicking my earlier mimicry of a ballerina. Roaring with laughter, out the door he went. The old man was out the drive and headed down the road before Mother found her tongue. After all these years, on occasion, your father still astonishes me. As Ma divvied up the remains of the teapot between us, she glanced up at the clock, and my eyes followed. 10 to 7. Do you have any plans to go out this evening? She inquired. No, why not? What do you need? I responded, still trying to get my head around what had just transpired with the old man. I don't need anything. I was just wondering where you got your tractor stuck. As So bad as you needed Eddie. In the ravine, I responded. In the ravine, did you say? Yeah, that's what I said. Well, I don't understand. I got the distinct impression from Diane that you were on the farm, and that's where Eddie was headed. That's right. I never got off the farm all day. I was stuck in the ravine. In the ravine. I'm going to put the kettle on, Ma. This is going to take some explaining. Well, top it up good. It's going to take all your powers of persuasion to convince me that all of a sudden there's a ravine on the farm. Might not take as long as you think, Ma, I laughed, filling the kettle. My powers of persuasion, as you call them, have been well honed today regarding that subject matter.